Hi, I'm Eve Jacobs-Carnahan, and I'm here in the historic village of Brownington, Vermont. The Old Stonehouse Museum invited me here to hold a knitting circle as part of my project, Knit Democracy Together. The project helps create a positive model of democracy in two ways. So the first way is people will come together and make knitted or crocheted or finger cord pieces of a sculpture that will be a sculpture of a state capitol building. And that is a representation of ideal democracy when it works well, because it's the community sending people to the legislature. The second way we'll be building a positive model of democracy is through the knitting circles, through the gatherings, where we will be learning and talking about ways to improve the functioning of our democratic system. So we were hoping we'd be able to hold the knitting circle across the road at the grammar school here in person, but because of the pandemic, it's going to be virtual. But that means you can participate from anywhere. So the reason this village is such a great place to hold this project, Knit Democracy Together, is because historic buildings like this one are the kind of 19th century houses where women would have gathered in knitting and sewing circles to talk about the issues of the day. For them, they would have talked about the abolitionist movement, the suffragist movement, both of which were moved forward by these gatherings of women who raised money for the causes, who talked about the issues, organized speaking events and ways of communicating with the other people in their community. The other reason that this village is such a great place for this project is because the headmaster of the grammar school, who built the beautiful dormitory, four-story granite building down the road, the Athenian Hall, was Alexander Twilight, and he served in the Vermont legislature in the 1830s. You'll be hearing from an expert from the Old Stonehouse Museum in a moment who can tell you more about Alexander Twilight.
I'm Bob Hunt, Associate Director of Operations here at the Old Stonehouse Museum in Brownington, Vermont. Behind me is a magnificent four-story granite dormitory building built under the direction of Alexander Twilight between 1834 and 1836. Twilight was the first African American to graduate from any American college or university, and interestingly enough, also was the first African American to serve in the state legislature in this country, which he did in the early 1830s. He was about 42 years old at that time. He was in his early 40s. He was headmaster here of the grammar school and also minister of the church. And he wanted to be in the legislature specifically because there was going to be some changes to the educational funding laws governing the funding of the county grammar schools. And he only served one term, but it was long enough to get him into the record book as the first African American to serve in any state legislature.
Alexander Twilight. So my project is kind of a modern take on these historic knitting circles, and the issue that we'll be talking about is how to improve the financing of campaigns in modern elections. And the reason that's an issue is because a lot of people are feeling really cynical and frustrated with the way our government may or may not really be representing the communities. And a lot of the cause for that is the disconnect between elected officials and the constituents. And that often ties into the fact that candidates who need to raise a lot of money look to the donors and spend a lot of time with those financial donors. But there are communities that have changed that dynamic with new measures that they're working on. And I'll be telling you about those, and we'll talk about whether they work or not. So, while we're talking and learning, we're going to have fun crafting these pieces of the sculpture. So I had shown you some samples of pieces that people had already made, and I want to show you this model. So this is a test that I had made of this is a small version of the sculpture that you're going to be making pieces for. The real one is going to be 3 feet tall, 5 feet wide. This is a simplified version. But what you can see is that all these little pieces were made by participants who helped me make this test project, this test model. And the hands that are there represent all of our hands and all the community hands that are not only building the sculpture, but they, in an ideal, well-working, functioning democracy, are building democracy by being the representatives who build the laws and build the government. So the hands there holding the knitting needles are the symbols of all of us participating. So I really hope you can join the virtual knitting circle. It's going to be Saturday, July 18th at 7 p.m. and there's information coming that will show you how to connect to it. I hope to see you there, and I'm eager to see the pieces that you're going to make and contribute to the sculpture.